As a huge Metroid fan and aficionado of the lore, I had a lot of thoughts surrounding Dread's story. Just how much of the manga is still canonical? Where does that ending leave us? Are the X still our enemy? And where will the next game go? Today, I'm going to be taking a deep dive into all of those questions. So first off, I want to briefly address my predictions from before the game was released. So first prediction. I thought the two Chozo shown in the trailers were the same. Wrong. This belief was entirely based on the overview trailer where they show both Quiet Voice and Ravenbeak and talk in the singular about the mysterious Chozo figure.
The mysterious bird-like Chozo figure, ally or enemy.
So I blame them. I don't know if that was an attempt to deliberately mislead or just confusion from those putting the trailer together, but it got me. Before that trailer, I actually thought there were two separate Chozo. Secondly, I predicted that this Chozo warrior might be on your side, trying to help Samus, trying to draw out her potential. I was mostly wrong here. This is not a redux of Grey Voice. Ravenbeak is a bad guy, full stop. But I did predict that this Chozo warrior would be the donor for Samus's Chozo DNA infusion. And on this, I was right. I was fucking right. However, what is interesting is that they explicitly tell us that Samus must have both Thoha as well as Morkin DNA. So Samus has at least two fathers, including Ravenbeak. Someone called Jerry Springer. What I like about this is that it doesn't render the Metroid manga explicitly non-canonical. Another possibility and a likelihood is that Quiet Voice is the Thoha donor. The way he acts towards Samus is very fatherly. This also still doesn't rule out that Grey Voice is another donor, or the Thoha donor. This is the kind of soft retcon the Metroid series is fond of, such as in Fusion the Metroids being revealed to have actually been created to combat the X. It doesn't invalidate the previous canon, it just adds to it. Chozo tribes are another new addition, having never been mentioned before, although the Prime games do allude to Chozo offshoots living on different colonies with different philosophies. But I like that they kept the naming scheme from the manga, so nothing's been invalidated here. What is new is that apparently some Chozo can fly. Old Bird explicitly states in the manga that the Chozo lost the use of their wings some time ago. Now this still seems true for the majority of Chozo, but Ravenbeak has now broken that rule. We could extrapolate and guess that maybe with great training Chozo can regain their flight, or maybe only the Morkin retained this since they're warriors. I would guess it's only Ravenbeak. He is, after all, an absolute fucking unit. Perhaps he helps himself along with some chicken stem cells or mechanical augmentation, or he trained like a boss to regain his flight, or some combination of those. One weird thing is that Samus we see being infused in the tank looks like a teenager rather than the young child of 3 or 4 that was previously the canonical age Samus lost her parents, was adopted by the Chozo, and got the DNA treatment to survive on planet SR388. It's not like that fact was established in just the Metroid manga, it's also been established in the Japanese Fusion ending screens, which show Kid Samus living on SR388 and the flashbacks in Other M. Bit weird to change it now, but who knows. Maybe Samus received additional DNA infusions as she got older, and this is one of those. Or maybe some details just got lost in translation to whoever was making the cutscenes for Mercury Steam. Another very small detail is that on this screen we see Samus and Ravenbeak's right hands highlighted specifically, as well as their hearts. So maybe Ravenbeak specifically lent the dexterity of his gun arm to Samus, making it that which gives her her incredible aim, assuming she's not being played by me. Just a small detail, but either way it seems likely that Ravenbeak is truly why Samus is such an incredible combatant. Him being so arrogant, he should have known that his daughter empowered by Metroid DNA would be the one thing capable of bringing him down. So one thing that happened in-game that caught me was Adam's betrayal at the end. I really fucking thought Adam had healed her. I was caught in the moment and not thinking, but you got me. You got me, Sakamoto. I loved it and really fucking enjoyed that moment. Because it's clear from the introduction that Adam still considers himself part of the Galactic Federation. He says to Samus, "Protect our lost assets, lady," as if he's acting as a spokesperson on behalf of the Federation. This is interesting because I would expect him to act more like just an assistant to Samus now, following the ending of Fusion where he goes against the Federation. Maybe as an AI he has little choice. He's stuck on the ship, and he and the ship are both technically Federation property. And Samus can't get rid of the ship without losing Adam. The GF really wants to control Samus as much as they can, which makes sense. I do feel like Adam's general shadiness and not really knowing if we can trust him is a continuation of Fusion, and a hint of things to come, but more on that in a bit. Back to the Adam twist, I didn't even realize until later that this meant Ravenbeak had been Adam the whole game, not just the scene at the end. Now, this isn't explicitly confirmed, but I think there are plenty of clues that point to this being the case. Adam states at the very beginning of the game that remote communication would not be possible until Samus linked up with the facility's own network, but that network was almost certainly controlled by Ravenbeak. Adam also never called Samus Lady after the introduction. At first I was thankful for this, but we should have known that something wasn't right. It's like when your weeb friend talks about getting rid of the body pillows and turning his life around. I mean, it's great, but he's definitely an imposter. Now, there are some arguments against the theory that Ravenbeak was Adam the whole game. One is that at the end of the game, Adam was aware of Samus's transformation into a Metroid, telling her upon her arrival back at the ship, "Don't, you'll drain the ship of its energy." The thing is that Metroid has never been a super details-oriented storyline, focusing more on the dramatic twists and turns, and it's easy enough to come up with some technological reason why Adam could monitor Samus but was blocked from communicating with her. In these games, much like comic books, the tech is an easy handwave for what you need to happen in the story. On the other hand, character-defining traits like Adam not calling Samus Lady seem more significant to me. Another explanation is that Adam simply knew this might happen. After all, the Federation are who did this to Samus back in Fusion. Ostensibly to save her life, sure, but who knows how deep this all goes. Either way, they knew that Samus was gaining Metroid powers back in Fusion. That was kind of the point, besides saving her life. It allowed her to combat the X. So seeing Samus suddenly looking very Metroid-y after bringing down a floating sky facility is kind of a big hint that maybe things have advanced. It's down to interpretation, but I feel like the "continue to follow orders" line strongly implies that Ravenbeak has been in control of the story the entire time, deliberately putting Samus through trials and tribulations in order to power up and unleash her true potential so that he can have the ultimate warrior. It retroactively makes sense of the entire plot. Some standout phrases that seem very un-Adam-like. "Trust your instincts" just seems a little bit sus given that Ravenbeak wants Samus to tap into the primal instincts of her DNA. "Under no circumstances should you enter high-temperature areas." Seriously though, Adam, what's with the change of heart? Sus. "You're faced with overwhelming power. Accept your helplessness." Okay, so Adam is a dick at times, but this one is real sus. It just sounds a lot more Ravenbeak than Adam. Repeatedly telling you that you are no match for Ravenbeak seems to be part of Ravenbeak's ego. He's basically a kid on the internet talking about himself in the third person on a Smurf account. He just can't help it. So, let's move on. I want to talk briefly about the characterization of Samus. Now, I talked about this in the review, but I think we're all happy to see Samus's flaws go in a direction that make more sense for the character. She's impetuous, impulsive, and heart-driven. That's been consistent throughout the series, but here we see Samus give in to rage and instinct, which makes complete sense for the character. Samus is a killing machine. She's been destroying entire planets and alien species for a while now, and she's been pushed close to death more times than she can count. That does things to a person, especially if you've got the DNA of two different warrior races in your veins. Samus has been modified for war, and at the end of Metroid Dread, we see that reach the ultimate conclusion. While I didn't dislike Other M as much as some other people, and I wouldn't like to completely eschew Samus's humanity or vulnerability as some would, making her a faceless Halo guy type character, I definitely think this approach of show not tell is important. We do see little moments of humanity here, and honestly it's these parts that make Samus feel more real and human than she's ever done in the series prior, including Other M. Other M just felt too overwrought, as if Sakamoto was trying to explain the story to toddlers. He hit home on the same points over and over until by the end it made Samus feel flanderized and a bit silly. Dread pulls back on this a lot, and I think Metroid fans appreciated the restraint. On the topic of Other M, I will again plug the YouTube documentary, Other M, The Ambition Behind the Failure. I won't defend Other M's writing, but unlike others, I'm not completely against trying to characterize Samus. Just because Other M did characterization poorly doesn't mean characterization itself is bad. Dread, I feel, hit a nice in-between point that made everyone happy. Changing tack slightly, Samus is now a Metroid, according to Ravenbeak. That seems perhaps a dramatic way of putting it, but certainly on the scale of human to Metroid, she's sliding dangerously fast towards mindless Predator. The first time we see Samus try to absorb an enemy, she fights off the instinct and shoots them instead, retaining her control and humanity. but after nearly being killed by an Emmy, she gives in to the Predator drive and absorbs several Morkin, seemingly gaining more power in the process. Now that Samus has embraced her Metroid blood, she'll have the power to grow stronger and stronger by absorbing the powers of any kind of foe, not just X-Parasites. This has huge implications for the rest of the series. We've seen plenty of games introduce special mechanics for regaining health, including this one with the melee counter, and I'm willing to bet in the next game this will play into Samus' newfound Metroid powers. It would be cool to see other effects, maybe being able to give Samus temporary power-ups through absorbing enemies, who knows. All I can say for sure is that I'm very excited for what comes next. One fun detail you may not have noticed that's carried over from Fusion is that Samus' suit has these 3 dots on the back. The position and placement right above these 2, dare I say, fang-like protrusions that serve as Samus' jetpack are unmistakable as the 3 eyes a Metroid has. What's interesting is that when Samus takes on her full Metroid form, these 3 dots become 8. This mirrors the number of eyes the Omega and Queen Metroid have. So before this game came out, it was stated that Metroid Dread is the final game in the Metroid arc. Now that the game is out, what does that mean? For me, it means that Metroids will no longer exist as enemies. It's been done, Metroids have been cloned and revived and evolved, and I think now we're done with Metroids as monsters, at least in the mainline Metroid series. Samus is now the Metroid. You can actually call her Metroid now, and it's accurate. But seriously, I'm glad that we're moving on. We don't need to have Metroids in every game, we don't need to have Ridley in every game, and that's something I think fans appreciate. When franchises tread the same ground over and over, it becomes patronizing. Sure, every once in a while we like to see an old thing brought back, especially when the last time we saw them they were in pixelated 2D, but if it becomes mandatory then it chokes the possibility out of new ideas for the series. That's why I'm so glad that we finally got this chronological sequel. As much as I love the Prime series, none of them moved the story forward for Metroid, they literally stayed in the past. The possibilities have always been ripe for what could happen after Fusion, and I think nobody can argue that after how satisfying Dread was. The possibilities are still ripe, and I'm going to talk about some of them now. There are 2 major threads I want to talk about, the Federation and the X. I still feel like Samus has a bone to pick with the Federation, and I would like to see us go back and resolve those hanging plot threads. Both Other M and Fusion left off with the Federation explicitly being shady as fuck, but that's never gone further. Now, the Federation is obviously a huge body of people, and it's hard to tar such a huge galaxy-spanning organization as purely good or evil. We see this thread in a lot of media, but I would love to see a Federation bad guy take the reins for villain in the next game. And this is total fan wank, but wouldn't it be cool to see Samus team up with the Space Pirates even if they were both begrudgingly working together? Just imagine sections where you got to play as Ridley or another of Ridley's species. That's a crazy idea, but after the insane set pieces of Dread, I don't think that idea is that insane anymore. Regardless of bad guys or not, there's a lot of room to expand upon the relationship between Samus and the Federation. The Emmys were the Federation going, "We don't need Samus, we'll handle this ourselves." Then literally 10 seconds later going, "God damn it, get Samus." Neither of them really like the other, but they need each other. We saw in Prime 3 the Federation bringing in other hunters, but at the end of the day it was only Samus who could get the job done. I expect Prime 4 to continue down this road of exploring other hunters, especially given the post-credits sequence in Prime 3, but the mainline series has more license to explore the Federation themselves. Finally, let's talk about the X. I don't think we're done with the X. The final scene of Dread made a massive reveal in showing that X-Parasites are capable of doing good. Quiet Robe X had already set the Emmy loose on Samus, but then in the moment of truth, gave its own life to become part of Samus and restore her from her berserk form. It's crazy that it, or he, was even able to do this, but there's something poetic about this father being restored to Samus while Ravenbeak's X was simply destroyed completely. But let's analyze this. We know that X-Parasites retain the memories of their hosts, but there's never been any indication that they lose their sense of self-preservation or need to duplicate. So I see one of 2 possibilities. One is that the will of Quiet Robe was so strong that it overrode the X's self-preservation instinct. The other is that perhaps, just perhaps, the X are capable of learning, of empathy, of reason. It might be their only method of survival, just like it has been for humans in the past. You can't fight everyone. They've seen what Samus can do, and maybe it's possible that this X realized there was no way they would survive as a species if they continued to make Samus their enemy. The X are surely intelligent when they inhabit an intelligent form, so I don't think it's crazy to say that they could evolve. In the past, they've only inhabited monstrous forms, But if they took over bodies with intelligence and empathy, that could be an absolutely crazy plotline. Very existential sci-fi, and a road I would love to see this series go down. You could argue, surely if X-parasites were capable of empathy, the SA-X wouldn't have been so intent on killing Samus. But let's remember that Samus herself is a killer. In particular, she killed Metroids, and at the time of fusion, Samus was a Metroid, at least in the eyes of the X. Combined with the X's inherent fear of Metroids, it may be that negotiation simply wasn't possible in that case. Let's not forget that the X would have copied not just Samus's mind, but her Morkin DNA and warlike tendencies. Samus herself doesn't negotiate, and has always sat on the line between Savior and Sinner, wiping out several planets in an effort to protect the galaxy. Metroid is a very morally grey series, and Samus is the avatar of that. Going forward with Samus as she is, I want to keep exploring the moral greys of the series, the idea of how history, family, and environment come into collision with our personal agency to shape the kind of person we are. That's something both Samus and the X have a lot of room to explore. I don't think Quiet Robe X using itself to undo Samus's berserk is going to be the end of that form. Samus is going to have to learn to control her powers, and just like Ravenbeak said, she's now potentially the biggest threat to the galaxy. How will the Federation react to that? How will Samus react to that? No matter what direction the next game goes, the possibilities are ripe for exploration. It's going to be incredibly difficult to top Dread, the bar has been set very high, but one thing's for sure, between the revival of the 2D games and the Prime series, it is an extremely good time to be a Metroid fan. Thank you for watching. I just want to say a huge shout out to Stemage, the creator of Metroid Metal, for letting me use his music. I didn't have time to rant about this in my Dread review because I wanted to keep it tight, but the one thing that made me sad about the soundtrack of Dread is that they got rid of the classic ending theme. It's my favourite theme in all of Metroid, and what you're hearing right now is Stemage's rendition of it. So do check it, and all the rest of the tracks out at metroidmetal.com, and follow him on Twitter at @Stemage. As for me, you can follow me on Twitter at EgregiousGamesG, or you can subscribe to me here if you haven't already. This will probably be my last Metroid video for a bit, but stay tuned as more game analysis, news, and discussion is coming. If you've got any thoughts or comments, please do leave them below. I really want to talk with people about this, and if you like this video, do like, as it really helps me out. Other than that, thank you for watching, and have yourself a fine-ass day. Some spare thoughts. Is Kraid a species? It must be. I want to see the Kraid planet. I want to see the Ridley planet. Show me, Sakamoto. I'm glad the Chozo were proper mini-bosses, not just regular enemies. Chozo warriors should not be goons to be mowed down. Killjoy was truly my Adam. Sometimes helpful, mostly a pain in my ass. Oh, you're still here? Well, one final thing I want to talk about is a theory that came up in the comments to my Doomtroid music video. So, Jade Kaiser floated the idea, what if, in the final fight, Ravenbeak was still trying to draw out Samus's potential at the end there, choking the life out of her slowly rather than killing her quickly, showing her her own weakness in the face of a stronger opponent. Perhaps forcing her to manifest her Metroid powers. And that would be a very interesting layer to Ravenbeak's character. Ravenbeak, by his own admission, worships at the altar of power. He also seems a very prideful character. He must be old. Chozo are dying out, but their one legacy is Samus. And while for some Chozo, the legacy of Samus would be one of a galactic savior, I imagine that Ravenbeak's perfect daughter would be something to inspire dread in the galaxy. A power greater than even all he has achieved. There's something to think. While we're throwing out wild theories, here's my last one. We saw that even after taking all that damage from Samus, having an entire ship's worth of energy use his body as a conduit, and surviving the crash landing of said ship, Ravenbeak was still ready to square up and do Phase 4. That was until the X got it. But what if... I mean, we know already that Ravenbeak likes cloning. What if this Ravenbeak was a clone of the real Ravenbeak, who was pulling the strings from elsewhere? What if this was all part of the real Ravenbeak's Keikaku? I know I talked a lot about being glad that Metroid isn't retreading the same ground, but I know myself and a lot of other Metroid fans would love to see more Ravenbeak. He's easily the best villain Samus has ever had, and it's kind of a shame to see him die at the end of one game. The franchise hopefully has a long life ahead of it yet, so who knows? I would love to believe we haven't seen the end of Ravenbeak.